The day my parents' will was read felt cold and bright. Sunlight streamed through the big windows of the Legal Eagle's law office. I sat quietly, watching my brother Victor parade around in his fancy suit. He already acted like he owned everything, and honestly, he probably did. Miss Evelyn Hayes, the lawyer, Mr. Davies, said, cutting through my thoughts, "Are you ready to begin?" I nodded, gripping my chair. At 32, I was about to find out what my parents truly thought of me. Their constant comparisons to Victor had made it pretty clear already. Mr. Davies adjusted his glasses and started reading. To our son, Victor, for his endless hard work in the family business and keeping the Apex Innovations name strong. He listed assets that made my head spin: a huge estate in the countryside, a beach house by the coast, major shares in Apex Innovations, and millions in investments. Victor's smile grew with each item. Then came my part. To our daughter, Evelyn, Mr. Davies paused, shuffling papers. We leave the painting Forest Whisper, currently in the study of our main home. The room went silent. Victor didn't even try to hide his laughter. "A painting?" I managed to whisper. "Just a painting?" "It was your mother's favorite," Mr. Davies offered weakly, clearly uncomfortable. Victor walked over and put a hand on my shoulder, his grip tight enough to hurt. "Don't worry, sis. I'll make sure you get a good job at the company, maybe in the mailroom." I shrugged off his hand and stood up. The Apex Innovations fortune, built over 3 generations, now belonged entirely to my brother. All I had was a single painting my mother had bought years ago from a small gallery. I'd always thought it was pretty, a forest at sunset with strange shapes hidden among the trees, but it wasn't a fair inheritance. "Is that all?" I asked Mr. Davies. He nodded sadly. "The painting must be picked up within 7 days." I left without another word, ignoring Victor's calls. The drive to my parents' house, now Victor's house, felt strange. The guards at the gate looked at me suspiciously, but let me in when I explained about the painting. Inside, our old housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, met me with tears in her eyes. "Oh, Miss Evelyn," she whispered, hugging me tight, "it's not right what they did to you." I hugged her back, fighting my own tears. Mrs. Gable had been more of a mother to me than my own mother sometimes. She helped me take the painting down from the study wall, carefully wrapping it in a blanket. "Your mother used to stare at this for hours," Mrs. Gable said softly, "especially in her last months. Sometimes she'd mumble about numbers and patterns. We thought her illness was making her confused." I looked at the painting more closely in the dim light of the study. The geometric shapes seemed to shift and change, creating patterns I'd never noticed. "Numbers?" Mrs. Gable nodded. She traced the shapes with her fingers over and over. Mr. Hayes would get so angry about it. That night, in my small apartment across town, I hung the painting on my living room wall. It was beautiful in its own way. The forest scene was painted with amazing detail, each leaf and branch perfect. But those geometric shapes, they didn't quite fit. They seemed almost on purpose, like they were trying to tell me something. I poured myself a glass of tea and sat on my couch, staring at the painting. My mother's final gift. Was it just a cruel joke, a last reminder that I'd never be as good as Victor? Or was there something more? My phone buzzed, Victor calling again. I ignored it, like his last 5 calls. He probably wanted to brag more, or maybe offer me that mailroom job. Instead, I opened my laptop and started looking up the painting. Forest Whisper, by an artist named Jane Miller. No big art shows, no auction records, hardly anything online. The gallery where my mother bought it had closed years ago. It was like the painting had appeared from nowhere. A text from Victor popped up. "Don't be mad, sis. Come work for me. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted." What my parents had wanted was for me to be more like Victor, to care about money and business, instead of following my passion for art history and fixing old things. I disappointed them by choosing my own path, and now they'd made their feelings clear. But something about the painting kept pulling my attention. Those shapes. They reminded me of something I'd learned in my art restoration classes: steganography, the art of hiding messages in plain sight. I got up and looked at the painting more closely. The geometric shapes were slightly different colors than the rest of the scene, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, and they seemed to form a pattern. A knock at my door made me jump. It was past midnight. Who would visit now? Through the peephole, I saw Victor. His usually perfect hair was messy. "Evelyn," he called out, "open up. We need to talk about the painting." I stayed silent, watching him. He'd never cared about art before. Why was he here now, in the middle of the night, asking about a supposedly worthless painting? "Evelyn, please." His voice had a desperate edge I'd never heard. "Mom left instructions about the painting. You need to get it back." Instructions? My heart started pounding. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe there really was something hidden in those shapes. "Go away, Victor," I called through the door. "The painting is mine. It's all I got, remember?" "You don't understand," he hissed. "That painting, it's not what you think. Give it to me now and I'll give you $5 million. $5 million for a painting he'd laughed about just hours ago? I backed away from the door, my mind racing. Victor was many things, but he wasn't stupid with money. If he was offering that much, the painting must be worth far more. I heard him fumbling with something. Keys? Did he still have a copy of my spare key from when I'd been sick last year? I quickly grabbed the painting off the wall and ran to my bedroom, locking the door just as I heard my front door open. "Evelyn!" Victor's voice echoed through my apartment. "Where are you? Where's the painting?" I held the painting close, my hands shaking. In the dim light of my bedroom, those geometric shapes seemed to glow faintly. And then I saw it, a pattern I'd missed before. The shapes weren't random at all. They formed numbers, hidden so cleverly in the forest scene that you'd never notice unless you knew exactly what to look for. "Evelyn," Victor was getting closer, "think about what you're doing. That painting is worth more than you can imagine." I turned the painting over, looking at the back. The canvas was professionally mounted, but something about the frame felt off, a small gap that shouldn't be there. My bedroom door handle rattled. "Evelyn, open this door right now." With trembling fingers, I pried at the gap. A small piece of paper fluttered out, covered in my mother's elegant handwriting. As I read the first line, my breath caught. "My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, you found what I always knew you would. You see patterns others miss. You question what others accept. And now, my darling girl, you're about to understand why your father and brother have always been so afraid of you." The pounding on my bedroom door grew louder, but I barely heard it. I was too busy reading my mother's letter, my hands shaking as each word revealed a truth that would change everything. The numbers in the painting weren't just random shapes. They were codes and passwords to something that would shake the very foundation of Apex Innovations. And my brother, still shouting outside my door, had no idea that his perfect world was about to crumble. I don't know how long I sat there on my bedroom floor, reading and rereading my mother's letter while Victor continued his rant outside. My hands trembled as I took in each carefully written word. The numbers in the painting, when combined with the access codes I've included here, will lead you to the truth about Apex Innovations. Your father and brother built their empire on stolen ideas, patents, and designs taken from brilliant minds who trusted them. I was one of those minds, Evelyn, and you, my dear daughter, were always meant to be my successor. A loud crash from my living room jolted me back to reality. Victor had apparently gotten tired of asking nicely. "I'm calling the police," I shouted, already dialing 911. "Go ahead," Victor yelled back. "I'll tell them you stole company property. That painting belongs to Apex Innovations." But I knew better now. The letter explained everything. How my mother had been a brilliant inventor, how she'd hidden her work in plain sight all these years. The painting wasn't just art, it was a key to a hidden database of evidence. The codes will lead you to my private workshop, the letter continued. Everything you need is there. But be careful, Evelyn. Your father and brother will do anything to keep their secrets buried. I heard Victor's footsteps retreating, followed by my front door slamming. Taking a deep breath, I emerged from my bedroom. My apartment was a mess. Victor had searched everywhere for the painting, but I didn't care about the chaos. I had work to do. First, I took pictures of every inch of the painting, capturing the geometric shapes from every angle. Then, I carefully wrote down the codes from my mother's letter. According to her instructions, I needed to layer the shapes in a specific order to reveal the full set of access codes. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Mrs. Gable, our old housekeeper. Miss Evelyn, men are at the house removing all your mother's things. They're looking for something in her study. Please be careful. They were destroying evidence. I had to move fast. The codes led to a location in the remote mountains, about 3 hours from the city. My mother had written that she bought the property under her maiden name, keeping it hidden from my father and brother. The lab is underground, her letter explained. The entrance looks like an old storage shed, but it's got top-notch security. Use the first set of numbers from the painting to get in. I packed quickly, laptop, the painting, carefully wrapped in blankets, some clothes, and my mother's letter. As I headed to my car, I noticed a dark SUV parked across the street, its engine running. Victor wasn't done yet. The drive to the mountains was tense. The SUV followed me for the first hour, keeping a steady distance. I took every side road and back road I could think of, finally losing them somewhere near the state border. By the time I reached the location, it was almost dawn. The property looked abandoned at first glance, just an overgrown field with an old broken-down farmhouse. But as I walked around, comparing the geometric shapes in the painting to the natural landscape, I realized my mother's genius. The shapes weren't just numbers, they were a map. The seemingly random patterns of trees and rocks matched the artwork perfectly. The storage shed was exactly where the painting showed it. Its rusted doors looked like they hadn't been opened in decades. But when I typed the first sequence into a hidden keypad, they smoothly swung open to reveal stairs going down into darkness. Motion sensor lights flickered on as I went down. The air grew colder with each step, and I could hear the soft hum of machines. At the bottom, another keypad waited. This time, I needed to use the second sequence from the painting. The laboratory that appeared from the darkness took my breath away. It was like stepping into a different world. Clean white walls, advanced equipment, and rows of computers humming quietly. But what caught my eye was the wall of patents and models. Dozens of inventions that I recognized from Apex Innovations products, but with one key difference. They all had my mother's original signature. "Oh my God," I whispered, moving closer to look at them. These weren't just similar to Apex Innovations technology, they were the originals. My mother hadn't just been a quiet person in the company, she had been its hidden genius. A familiar voice behind me made my blood run cold. Impressive, isn't it? I spun around to find my father standing in the doorway, looking exactly as he had the day he died, or at least the day we thought he died. Victor stood beside him, a satisfied smirk on his face. "Did you really think your mother was the only one who knew about this place?" my father asked, stepping into the lab. "Though I must admit, hiding the codes in that painting was clever. We've been searching for this place for months." I backed away, clutching my mother's letter. "You're supposed to be dead." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Sometimes the best way to find something is to make people stop looking for it. Your mother's death was, sadly, real. But mine? Well, let's just say it served its purpose." The will reading was a trap, I realized. You wanted me to find the painting. "We needed you to lead us here," Victor explained, moving to block the exit. "Mom changed all the security codes before she died. We couldn't get in without the codes." "And now," my father said, moving closer, You're going to help us destroy everything in this lab. All proof of your mother's work will disappear, and Apex Innovations patents will stay safe. But they had made one big mistake. While they were talking, I had been backing toward my mother's main computer. Her letter had mentioned an emergency plan, a sequence of numbers that would activate something she called the Truth Protocol. Actually, I said, reaching behind me to type in the sequence, I don't think I will. The lab's lights suddenly turned a pulsing red, and a computer voice announced, Truth Protocol activated, broadcasting evidence to all major news outlets and regulatory agencies. Deletion impossible. My father's face twisted with rage. What have you done? Mom called it her insurance policy, I said, feeling stronger with each word. Every piece of evidence in this lab has just been sent to hundreds of secure places. Patents, proof of theft, fake documents, everything. Apex Innovations is about to face some very uncomfortable questions. Victor lunged forward, but it was too late. Alarms began blaring, and the lab's security systems activated, sealing all exits. We were locked in together with the truth that would destroy their empire. She knew, I continued, watching their faces turn pale. She knew you would try to hide her work, just like you hid her inventions. So she made sure the truth would come out one way or another. Through the lab's small windows, I could see police lights approaching. Someone, probably the lab's security system, had called the local police. My father and Victor exchanged panicked looks as the sound of sirens grew closer. The painting that had started everything still sat wrapped in blankets by the door. Those seemingly worthless geometric shapes had led me exactly where I needed to go. My mother's final gift wasn't just a painting, it was justice. And as I watched my father and brother realize their perfect world was falling apart, I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. The real story of Apex Innovations was about to be told, and this time, no one would be able to hide the truth. The next 2 days passed in a blur of police statements, news reports, and company chaos. I watched from my hotel room as Apex Innovations stock dropped. Years of carefully built lies were falling apart in real time. Apex Innovations' CEO found alive, arrested for fraud, the headline screamed. Company built on stolen patents. Mother's revenge, the hidden genius behind Apex Tech. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. Journalists, lawyers, former employees, everyone wanted to hear my side of the story, but I was only interested in one call, Mrs. Gable, our former housekeeper, who had more to share. Your mother knew this day would come, she told me, her voice heavy with emotion. That's why she made me promise to give you this after the truth came out. An hour later, I sat in Mrs. Gable's small living room, holding another letter from my mother. This one was different, not instructions or codes, but a story, her story. My dearest Evelyn, it began, now that you know the truth about Apex Innovations, it's time you understood your own history. You were never less than your brother. You were always meant for something more. As I read, the pieces of my life slowly clicked into place. My mother hadn't just been another victim of my father's plans. She had been playing a long game, preparing me for this moment from the very beginning. Those art history classes I'd taken, they weren't a waste of time, as my father had claimed. They had trained my eye to spot patterns, to understand hidden meanings. My work in restoration had taught me patience, care, and the ability to find truth from small pieces. Every time your father pushed you away from the business, my mother wrote, every time he favored Victor, he was unknowingly helping to prepare you for this moment. You learned to think differently, to see what others missed. While Victor was learning to keep the lies, you were learning to expose them. A knock at Mrs. Gable's door interrupted my reading. A woman in a sharp suit stood outside, holding a briefcase. Miss Hayes, I'm Miss Chen from the Financial Watchdog. We need to discuss your mother's patents. The next few hours were a quick lesson in just how much my mother had prepared. She hadn't just documented the stolen patents, she had kept inventing, working in secret in her underground lab. The paintings codes had led not only to proof of past theft, but to new inventions that could change the industry. Your mother filed these patents under a special trust, Miss Chen explained, spreading documents across Mrs. Gable's coffee table. A trust that names you as the only beneficiary. My hands trembled as I looked at the paperwork. Dozens of patents, all legally protected, all now belonging to me. Not just the old inventions my father had stolen, but new ones, years ahead of current technology. Apex Innovations doesn't just owe you money for the stolen patents, Ms. Chen continued. They've built their entire company around your mother's technology. They can't work without it. So what does that mean? I asked, though I was starting to understand. It means, Miss Hayes, that you now basically control the company that pushed you aside. While my father and Victor sat in jail waiting for their trial, I walked into Apex Innovations headquarters the next morning, not as the forgotten daughter, but as its new owner. The board of directors, desperate to save the company from total collapse, had no choice but to accept my terms. Standing in my father's former office, I found another surprise, a wall safe hidden behind the painting that had once hung there. The combination? The final sequence of numbers from my mother's painting. Inside was a personal diary detailing every invention he had stolen, every inventor he had betrayed. But more importantly, it contained a list of names, people like my mother who had been cheated out of their rightful recognition. 1 month later, I stood on a stage at a quickly called press conference, announcing the company's new direction. Apex Innovations was built on stolen dreams, I told the crowd. Today, we begin making things right. We're starting a foundation to pay back every inventor who was wronged by the previous leaders. But more than that, we're changing the company into what it should have been all along, a place for new ideas, where brilliant minds are celebrated, not used. The painting that started it all now hangs in my new office, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things are hidden in plain sight. The geometric shapes that once hid my mother's secret now represent something else, the pattern of a better future, one built on truth instead of lies. Victor wrote to me from prison, switching between threats and pleas for help. I sent back a single photograph, the painting now hanging exactly where our father's portrait used to be. He would understand the message. His world of lies was over. My father stayed silent, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth he had fought so hard to bury was now his legacy. The great Mr. Hayes would be remembered not as a smart businessman, but as a thief who stole his own wife's genius. Late one evening, as I was getting ready to leave the office, Mrs. Gable brought me one final letter from my mother. This one had been timed to arrive exactly 1 month after the company's change began. My darling Evelyn, it read, if you're reading this, you've done more than just show the truth. You've started to rebuild from the ashes of lies. I never wanted you to inherit a corrupt empire. I wanted you to have the chance to build something honest, something worthy of your heart. I traced my fingers over her handwriting, feeling closer to her than ever before. The worthless painting had been anything but worthless. It had been the key to everything. More than that, it had been my mother's way of showing me that I had inherited something far more valuable than money or status. I had inherited her vision for a better world. 2 years later, Apex Innovations, now renamed Aurora Innovations, is completely different. We've become a leader not just in technology, but in doing business fairly. The foundation has helped dozens of inventors get back their stolen ideas, and our program for new ideas has started countless new careers. The painting still hangs in my office, its geometric shapes now a familiar comfort. Sometimes, late at night, I could swear they shift slightly, as if my mother is still there, leaving me new patterns to solve, new truths to find. But the most important truth was there all along, hidden in plain sight, just like those numbers. Success built on lies will always fall apart, but success built on truth and fairness will last forever. Victor wrote to me from prison last week. He sent me a message asking to meet to talk about fixing our family. I haven't answered yet. Some patterns, I've learned, are better left unchanged. Instead, I spend my time focusing on the future. The company hosts an annual innovation fair where young inventors can show their ideas without fear of theft. Last year's winner was a young woman whose story reminded me of my mother. Brilliant, underestimated, but strong in her vision. As I handed her the award, I saw my mother's painting reflected in the glass trophy. The geometric shapes seemed to dance with approval, reminding me that sometimes the greatest inheritances aren't the ones we can hold in our hands, but the ones that change us from within. The worthless painting had given me something priceless: the truth about my past, control of my future, and most importantly, the chance to make sure no other brilliant mind would ever be silenced or stolen from again. And that, I know, would make my mother prouder than any fortune ever could.